What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another Swift tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at how you can set up a login form and a account creation form like the one you see here using Firebase. So we can see here that we have users that we went ahead and created, so we can log into these user accounts. So for example, let's log in to this account and password is password. And once we sign in, you can see the form went away. And if we reopen the app, like you saw initially, we have our sign out button. We can tap it to sign out. And if we try to log in with another account that doesn't exist yet, and we continue, it'll prompt us to create the account. And when we continue, it'll create the account and sign us in. And if we come on over to the console and reload it, you'll see that the new account is added to our list. So we'll take a look, deep dive into how to set up the Firebase console, how to create the form, how to hook it all up, and all that good stuff. So that said, smash that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Helps out the video and the channel quite a bit. Subscribe if you're new. Get Xcode ready, get excited, let's jump right in. Quick pause before we get into the video. If you haven't seen it already, I am hard at work putting together iOSacademy.io, a community where all of us iOS engineers can come together, learn how to build some of the top apps like Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, in addition to interview prep to land some of these iOS roles at top tech companies. So if you're interested in the free and premium content to come, head on over to iOSacademy.io and enter your email address in the waitlist form, and you will be notified as content becomes available. That said, let's get into the video. Alright, so let's begin by creating a new project. And we're going to stick with a single view application template. Let's call this project email password login. I'm going to uncheck this. We don't want unit test in this case. Let's hit enter twice to create the project and save it to our desktop. And let's jump right in. So the very first thing we want to do is bring in Firebase's Authentication library and the Firebase core library, which helps us set up the app and configure it with the Firebase minimum requirements. So we're going to do that in CocoaPods. So open up terminal and cd into your project. And let me expand this. Do a pod init to initialize this project with CocoaPods. If you're not familiar with CocoaPods, I've got a separate video on it. But once it's initialized, you can open up the pod file and it'll open up in TextEdit. And like I said, the two things we want to bring in here are the pod for Firebase core and Firebase auth. Make sure you lowercase the p here, otherwise you'll hit an error when you run the next command. Close up TextEdit, and in terminal, run pod install. Give it a few seconds. You probably won't have all this jazz, all these warnings. I just need to fix some settings on my computer. But once it installs, you'll see all this stuff being installed. Obviously, we only added two things, but there are a lot of dependencies under the hood that Google brings in when you install those two Firebase libraries. So now we can close this version of Xcode, this window rather, with a Command W. And we want to open up the workspace by doing open project name .xe workspace. And let's expand this. Let's open up our project tree over here. And we're going to go to the app delegate to begin. In here, you want to import Firebase. And let's actually select the simulator and just hit Command B to make sure things are still building. In just a moment, we're going to head on over to the Firebase console at firebase.com and set this up in the platform console that Google has. So give this a second to compile. Shouldn't take too long. And while it's actually doing that, you should head on over to firebase.com, I've logged into my account here, and we're going to create a new project. Looks like this just compiled. And what we want to do in this application did finish launching function is simply call Firebase .configure, I believe. Oh, just kidding. It's fire app.configure, unless they renamed it. Firebase app.configure. I feel like they rename this every week I use it. But when you run your app, you're going to actually crash right now because when you call configure, your app is looking for a plist file that we're going to bring in by creating the app over here in the console. So let's do that. And we're going to need the bundle ID. So come on up here to your project navigator and copy this string right here. And come back here and let's call our project email pass login. And what else do we want to do? That should be good to go. Let's reload this. That button should be clickable. Hit this. Let's call this email pass login. And okay, it wants us to select this. Whatever. Parent resource. We want this. Let's continue. And it wants a default account for our analytics, so select that one, continue. And once this is good to go, so this is creating the project, and then we're going to add our iOS app to the project. So give it a few seconds. Sometimes I wonder if this is actually doing something, or if they just show us a loader to make us feel good because something's going on, but who knows. Anyways, let's hit this to continue. Let's hit iOS. And now we want to paste in that bundle ID here. You can leave this stuff empty as it's optional. So let's be lazy and skip it. The next thing we're going to get is our plist file for Google services that we want to download. Let's download this. And this is what we're going to bring into our project. So let's put it on our desktop there. Now we can just hit next a bunch. This is basically just telling us to set up the CocoaPod and the app delegate as we did already. And finally, drag this into your project. Make sure this first box is checked to copy the resource to your project. Make sure your app delegate has this configure call, and hit Command R to build and run. And now Firebase is just waiting to get some communication message from our simulator that it's indeed configured. This takes a few seconds sometimes. Sometimes you got to clean your project and rerun it. So let's see how long this takes and if it decides to be difficult today. And what I'll do is just stop running the project, do a Command-Shift-K, which will clean your project, and delete the app from your simulator. Hit Command-R. You can ignore this warning, it goes away. Basically, we're cleaning the project and we're fresh building and fresh installing it. Generally, that helps this get the check mark here and go faster. So there it builds and it launches. And just wait on the simulator for a few seconds. I like to be impatient and check this faster than I probably should. Your app should not be crashing. If your app is crashing, you're missing the Google Services plist file here. But we should be good to go soon. Otherwise, you guys can forward the video. Maybe. Let's close this and reopen it. Yeah, sometimes Firebase does the sync up really fast, and other times, there it goes, when I need it to be fast, it's super slow. But let's click that button, and we've got our application, our iOS app, set up in this project here. Now we can talk about authentication with an email and password. So to begin, you want to go to the Develop tab and Authentication. Hit this tab, Sign In Methods, and we want to enable email password sign-in, and you'll see it's this first one here. So we can simply click it and turn this switch on. Let me zoom out so you guys can see it. And let's get rid of my find window. Basically, this just allows us to do a very simple email password sign-in, and then you have your email link passwordless sign-in switch. So this basically, we're not going to do in this video, but if we had this set up and configured, the app could send a email to the user, and there would be a link that they can click, and it'll deep link to the app and auto sign the user in. So we'll save this for a next video since it's a little more involved, but let's save this. And I believe that's all we need to do in terms of the console here to get this working. Now we just need to implement a little bit of code. So what we're going to do is we are going to basically show a login form here, email and password. And when we type in an email and password and hit sign in, obviously there's no user here. So we're going to prompt to the user, do you want to create an account? And if they hit create account, we'll create their account. And if the account, I guess, does exist, we'll just sign them in. So for the purposes of this video, we'll build things in that kind of fashion. And if we need to tweak it along the way, we'll do that as well. So let's create this stuff in code. And you can create your fields via the storyboard and connect outlets as well. Both versions are just as valid. So let's get started by creating a label, which will be our title in our view controller, of course. So this will be a label, and we'll say label.text alignment is center, label.text is login. Let's return a label. We'll say label.font is system font. Of size, let's do 24. Weight, we'll say semi-bold. And we want to add this as a subview. And now, most importantly, we need 2 fields and 1 sign-in button. So let me copy and paste this. So email field, password field, and sign-in button. Let's rename all this to be email field. This will be a UI text field, and a UI button. And let's change up all of this. Let me get rid of that. UI text field. We're going to have this field have a placeholder of email address. And what else do we need on the field? I guess what we could do is also give this a little border visually. So we're going to say email field dot layer dot border width is 1. And we also want to give this a border color, which is UI color dot black dot CG color. And I think that's good enough for this demo. So let me copy and paste this. And whoops, let's align this indentation with a Control-I. And let's change this to be password field, pass field. And the thing we want to add to this field after we update this is we want to say is secure. And this will basically give us the password dots you see, so the asterisks instead of showing what we're typing, we as in the user. And let's call this button. This will be a UI button. Let's get rid of all this. This will be a button. Let's return a button. And we're going to say the background color is system green. Set title color will be white, normal. And let's set the title itself. Let's call this continue for normal. And these are the 4 UI components that we need. Let's add the additional ones as subviews. So view, add subview, email field, password field, and button. And let's see, what more do we need? So we also need to create a function that gets called when this button is tapped. So we're going to create a Objective-C prefixed func called did tap button. And for this button, we're going to say button add target self. The selector is did tap button, which is the guy we added right here. And the event is touch up inside. And let's see, we also need to give frames for all of these UI components. So we're going to do that in view did layout subviews, call super view did layout subviews, and all of these UI components now need a frame. So we'll do them top down. So the first one is going to be the label. Its frame will be a CG rect, XY width and height. So we'll say 0, 100, view.frame.size.width, and let's make this 80. And let me copy and paste this for the other UI components. The next one will be the email field, password field, and button. So for the email field, we're going to say the X is 20. Same thing for the button and the password field. The Y value will change for all of these. So we are going to say the Y value for the email field is label.frame.origin.y plus label.frame.size.height plus 10. So this will place the email field 10 pixels below the label. And the width we need to modify as well. Let me put line breaks here so you guys can see all of it. So XY width and height. Let me do the same for this. XY width and height. Whoops. Like that. Like that. And like that. The width we want to subtract 40 because the X is 20. Same thing for the next two views. And let's see, we want the height of an email field to be 50, which is generally considered to be the standard. So let's update this to be 50 as well. Let's change the Y for both of these, and we can hit run to make sure our UI looks correct. So I am going to copy and paste this for the Y value for the password field. Difference being we want to change this label to be the email field, so the password field sits 10 pixels below the email field. And similarly, we can copy and paste this jazz to the button. And the difference again being instead of email field, we want this to be password field. And I believe we should be good to go. Let me also put a print statement in here. And let's just say continue button tapped. So let's hit Command R to build and run and see what we get. We should get our title, our two fields, and our sign-in button, or continue button. Now, our continue button's obnoxiously tall in comparison to the fields, so let's make the height a little less, and let's move it down a little bit as well. So let's say the height of this is 52, and let's also say plus, instead of 10, we'll do like 50. Let's do 30 actually. And I guess the other thing we can do also in, I guess view did appear. Let's do it in. We can automatically pop up the keyboard for the email field by saying email field dot become first responder. And now we can actually have the user type. And if we tap on the button, hopefully we get our print statement down here. So let's hit this button and we get our print. So before we run it again, let's implement the actual sign-in stuff in here. So the first thing we want to do is basically validate that the email field as well as the password field both have text in them. So let's do that. So we're going to say guard led email equals email field dot text. And then we also want to make sure the email is not empty. And then we're going to say let password equals password field dot text, and make sure the password is also not empty. If they are, we're going to return in this else. Generally, you would show the user an error. We won't do that for now. We'll put a print statement in here saying missing field data. So now once you have the email and password variables, which are strings of course, we can pass them to Firebase to attempt to sign in. So before we do that, let's make sure we import Firebase auth, and we want to get an instance of Firebase auth. Actually, let's put the steps here that we want to do. Basically, get auth instance, attempt sign in, and then if failure, present alert to create account. If user continues, create account. And then what we'll also look at in this video, I guess, is how to sign the user out and check if they're signed in once you subsequently launch the app. So we'll also add that here. So check sign in on app launch, allow user to sign out with button. So this is basically what's remaining and the workflow we need to set up. So let's do that now. First step, we are simply going to say Firebase auth .auth one more time. And we want to create an account or we want to attempt to sign in first. So we're going to say sign in with email and password with the completion block. So the email, we're going to pass in our email variable from the guard statement. Password, we're going to pass in the password. And the completion is going to be a result and error in this block. And basically, per our workflow, we're going to say if we hit an error, meaning we couldn't sign the user in with this, we're going to show the alert for the account creation. So let's say guard error equals nil, else we're going to return, and before we return, we're going to say show account creation. Otherwise, we will print you have signed in, and we want to also get rid of the sign-in form elements, so the email, password field, button, and title. Let's also say weak self over here, and let's say guard let strong self equals self, else return. Now, if you're not familiar with weak and strong self, don't worry about it too much. It is extremely important, so I've got some videos planned for it coming up. But if you're not too familiar, just feel free to follow along. But we're going to say in here, self.show create account, and we're going to say strong self. And let's create this function down here. And the other thing we'll say, and let's see, strong self is this is a function. Let's say command B. Something doesn't look right. Let's see, we've got this here. Strong self, function name. We should be able to call it. Let's take a look at the error real fast. Value of type view controller has no member. It definitely does. Oh, we put the function in a function. Whoops, totally by mistake. Let's put that there. This should turn green, like so. And let's see, now what we can do in here is show an alert. But before we do that, if the user did sign in, let's get rid of the label. We'll just say is hidden is true. And let's do that for the other views as well. Email field, password field, and button. And ideally, we also want to show the logout button, but we'll be lazy and leave that out from this function for now. We'll just do an view did load once we get to that step in our workflow. More importantly, once we come into this function, in our guard, we want to show an alert, which will be an alert controller, and it'll have a title, message, and style. So let's say create account. Would you like to create an account? And this will be an alert. And we need to add 2 actions to this. So the first one is going to be UI alert action with a title. So the title for this one is going to be continue, style will be default, and handler will be this. Let's copy and paste this. You can ignore the warning over here. It's just yelling at us that we haven't used this alert variable yet, but it goes away like that. The next one we want is a cancel, and its title will be cancel. And finally, let's present this alert by saying present alert animated true. If the user continues, hits the continue button in our alert, we want to use Firebase to create an account with their email and password. So something I guess we can do, instead of having to do this guard let statement in that function again, we can actually pass in the email and password to this function as a parameter. So what I'll do here is email string password string, like so. And in here, if we open this parentheses again, it'll autocomplete like that. Pass in the email, pass in the password. And in here, we can create an account by saying Firebase auth.auth one more time, create, I think it's create account, create user with email and password, email, password, result and error in here. And actually, once the user creates an account, if memory serves, Firebase will auto log in that new user as well. So we can come in here and actually copy and paste what we have in this function. Basically, we want to check if there's an error, and we want to also use strong self to get rid of the label, field, and button. So paste that in here. The thing you want to get rid of, though, is this call. And we also want to add a weak self over here, like that. This error will go away once you do that. And in the case this fails, we're just going to put a print and say account creation failed. So let's run this. We wrote a decent amount of code. Let's make sure it works before we continue. So go ahead and hit the play button or hit Command R. And let's see what we get. So let me also expand this part of the console by closing the left side like so. And let's also give our screen a background color. I think we can do a little better than the white background color. So let's say view dot background color. Let's do, I don't know, let's do system purple. I'll be nice and bright. A little too bright, I guess. And you just noticed, I guess I forgot to do one more thing. Let's also set a background color for our fields, because by default they are translucent. So background color, white. Let's copy this for the password one as well. And hit Command R, hopefully for the last time for this example. All right, cool. So we're gonna click on this. You'll notice the keyboard doesn't pop up because it connects your computer's keyboard. So you can come up here to the toolbar, and I think under I/O, or it's under I/O if memory serves, you want to go to keyboard right here and toggle software keyboard, and the keyboard will pop up in your simulator. So you can see it more so like a user would see it. So let's type in an email. So let's say hello at iosacademy.io. Another issue you'll notice is the text is flush with the field, and we can also take a look at that and how to fix it in a second. And the password we'll just say is password, all lowercase. Let's hit our button to continue. And we get the expected alert because obviously it can't sign us in because we don't have a user with these credentials here, as you can see. So we're going to hit continue, which should create our account, sign us in, and have our items disappear, which is indeed what happens. You'll notice another issue here is the keyboard is still here, so we'll fix this also. But what we care about is if we come back here and hit Command R to refresh our console, we should see our user, which in fact we do. So we've got our authentication with an email and password, as well as account creation working. So let's take a look at signing out the user and also fixing a few of these issues that we encountered when using this. So the first issue you noticed is, and let's close this app and let's delete it because we're going to sign in with those credentials again and make sure the sign-in works this time and that we don't get the create account pop up. So let's do a couple things. The first thing is we don't want to auto capitalize for our email. So we're going to change the auto capitalization type to be none. And we also want to add some buffer to the left side of the field where the user begins typing. So we're going to say email field, and we want to update the left view and left view mode. So the mode is going to be, I believe, always. And we want to say the left view is simply a UI view, which has some buffer. So let's give it a frame with a XY width and heights, 0, 0. Let's do, I guess 5 is good for now. Height is 0 as well. Let's copy and paste this and also put it into our password field. Change the variable name. And like I mentioned, when the fields go away, once we have successfully signed in, we also want to dismiss the keyboard. So we're going to say email field, rather strong self.email field, resign first responder, and let's also do that on the password field. Let's also bring this into our create account function, paste those there. And finally, once the user has signed in, once you reopen the app in view to load, we should show a sign in button, rather a sign out button. And then once the user taps it, of course, sign them out. So in here, we're going to say if Firebase one more auth, current user doesn't equal nil, we can basically hide all of the fields because a current user exists, and a current user will only exist if there is an authentication session. So again, we can say is hidden is true, and let's copy and paste this. Do it for our button, our email field, our password field. Let's create a sign out button in here. And actually what I'll do is I'll be lazy and we'll just copy and paste this button and just call it sign out button, log out since we used login up above. And let's we'll say in here view add subview, and let's give this a frame in here also. So we're gonna say 20, 150 view.frame.size.width minus 40 and 52. And finally, we want to create a function that gets called when the user taps this button, and we'll call it logout tapped. And let's attach this function to this button with an add target, touch up inside. And to actually sign the user out, it's pretty simple. In a do catch statement, we want to try to sign the user out. So I believe it's Firebase auth.auth.auth.signout. And if sign out results in an error, we're simply going to print it out in error occurred. Otherwise, after the user has signed out, we want to once again show all of the fields and get rid of the sign out button. So all of the is hiddens will turn into true, as in rather false, as in they are no longer hidden. And we want to get rid of the logout button, or we called it sign out button. So we'll just remove that from the super view. So let's give this a go. So let's hit Command R, and it'll freshly install our app. And we should get our login field again, but looks like we don't. So that's not good. Let's see. So we don't want to pop up the keyboard in view did appear if there is a current user. So if current user doesn't equal nil, we're going to get rid of everything. So when we freshly install the app, we shouldn't have a current user. So let's reset the simulator by coming up here and doing an erase. And let's stop this and go back to the view controller. We also don't want to say become first responder in this function if the user is signed in, because we're not showing the fields. So we can say if Firebase auth.auth.auth current user equals nil, then we can show the keyboard, because if there's no current user, that means we need to sign in. But let's hit Command R again, give the simulator a few seconds to reset itself, and we should be working properly. If not, we can debug this together. Give it a few seconds. This video has actually gotten longer than I intended, so we'll wrap up fairly soon. There it goes. Okay, perfect. So it seems like Firebase caches it to the device, so we need to do a reset of our simulator to get a clean, no user authenticated workflow. So let's sign in with that account we made. So it's hello@iosacademy.io, and the password is password. When we hit this, it should just sign us in, no prompt. And when we hit Command R to build and run again, we should have a log out button this time, hopefully. If the app decides to work, looks like, let's hit that again. Looks like it was slow that time. There it goes. And when we hit this, we should successfully just log out, and it should show us our form again, like so. If we hit Command R to build and run one more time, we should be on our form because we are now signed out. So there you have it. That's how you set up email, password, account creation, and authentication for your iOS app using Firebase. So like I said, this video got a little longer than I anticipated. I probably won't edit out the mistakes I made myself. I think they're helpful for all of you. I know when I was learning so many years ago, they're definitely helpful for me. So that said, if you haven't hit that like button already, make sure you do so. Helps out the video and channel quite a bit. If you're new to the channel, enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button while you're at it. If you have any issues or comments, errors, comment down below. I reply to every single comment. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.